for many years, and I fortunately have had an experience in working in a nonprofit. And back then, that's previous to 2007, it was very easy to provide or to find funding for program support. It was always very difficult to find funding for capacity building of the organization. And that with my experience at the foundation over the last 15 years, that has been the same case. But what has occurred is as the foundation has grown, we have been able to bring in many more streams of grant making for program support, to the point where now we can start to pivot as a foundation to look at our nonprofits from a capacity standpoint. Oftentimes for the nonprofit sector, there's particular needs that go unaddressed. It's organizational development, training, structure, how to run a good PR and communication campaign, what does good accounting look like, which is not only a learning exercise, but it's also about what does the internal organization need? Does it need an accountant full-time? Does it need people that understand what structure is, or do we need to hire some more therapists, or do we need a software platform to enter our client data into, so that we can then turn around and demonstrate data? So that was really the driving force behind this, and this has been a dream of mine that at some point in time we would be able to get to this place of being able to offer capacity building grants. Because if we don't build the capacity of our nonprofit sector, we're not going to get good outcomes. And that's the bottom line. Because outcomes are really generated by organizations that are well organized and crafted and have the internal capacity to deliver good program. So in having that mindset over the years and having these conversations with not only with donors, but also with the board of the foundation, we have come to this place in time where we're ready to engage as a foundation in building a better nonprofit. Now, in order to get here, there was a couple of other things that need to happen. One was I needed to recruit an individual that would become the impact officer for the foundation and build the staff of the foundation to support not only her work, but the auxiliary work that we're all doing as staff members of the foundation. So that also incorporated finding individuals to occupy certain lanes within the foundation. One of those was a good program officer. So, and also a community coordinator. So our roles of the foundation are constantly changing as we try to meet community expectations. So in doing so, one of the individuals I reached out to when the position for program officer became available was Kathy Haven. And it was important for a couple of different reasons to recruit Kathy. Kathy is, she's a workhorse. She doesn't know how to stop. There's just one speed with Kathy, which is go. And also because she represented somebody in South Lake Tahoe. So have the foundation staff have a South Lake Tahoe individual as part of our staff was very important to me. And fortunately, Kathy said yes. Little did she know she was going to be stepping into a role right in the middle of a pandemic, followed by a massive $5 million grant to small businesses, and then followed by the Caldor fire. And I figured she can get through those things. She's going to stick with us for a while. And Kathy has a lot of community knowledge, and so that also brought a real asset to the foundation. The next one was to find somebody that was very analytical, that could look at structure both organizationally and from a capacity issue, capacity component, that would be able to bring that impact to our community of nonprofits. And I've known Avis Jolly for a number of years with her work in Ag in the Classroom. And in our conversations that we would have, Avis understood the importance of creating a firm organizational foundation and how critical that is in the success of a nonprofit. When the funding became available to look for an impact officer, I corralled Avis, had the conversation with Avis. Little did I know that I was going to be interviewed by her husband at the same time, because they both wanted to make sure it was the right fit and what was the expectations. Avis comes with a wealth of knowledge out of Intel as a program manager, so this is not a new field for her. And she has been able to pull this all together for us as a foundation. So that is the introduction to today, and just thrilled with where we're going in this. Avis, it's all yours from here.
Okay. Thank you all so much for being here. I can't tell you, I've been waiting for this. I've now been on board for a year. And kind of to get my feet wet, I took on board a couple of nonprofits that were up and coming or were already up and struggling a little bit, just to kind of make sure that we were headed in the right direction with this. Worked with them over the first 6-9 months, and I still have a couple in my portfolio, is what I like to say, that I'm guiding along, and then to get us ready to launch this and the timing right, and like Bill said, to align all the stars at the foundation for this, because the wonderful thing at the end of this is we are ready at the foundation to start doing some capacity granting, which someone who scraped by in the nonprofit community, this is huge. You know, you always were building in overhead into those project and program grants, and that's always just so frustrating to have all those bills to pay still, no matter what project or program you're doing. So this is an amazing opportunity, and I'm so excited. And I do come from Intel Corporation. I was a process and program improvement there for about 8 years. And then, you know, I've kind of run the gamut, even though Bill speaks about being executive director of Ag in the Classroom. Really, this is for any size organization here in the county. And you'll see whenever we get to the floor plans of success what we actually mean by that. Because another role that I played in the county as a mom is I sit on booster organizations and I sit on PTOs, and they are nonprofits too. And they need to understand what they're doing and make sure they're doing it right, to make sure that they are effective and efficient. So from the small to the big, you know, there's the whole wide range of what we have here in the county. So I'm going to start sharing my screen, go over our agenda today. From my Intel days, I am a stickler for time. Again, being a nonprofit and having volunteers at your nonprofit, I totally believe your time is valuable. Yesterday, I got done at 12:02 with questions for the first group, so I hope to nail it again. So what I will ask is, we'll be using the chat a lot. There'll be times when I'll tell you I'm not ignoring you. I'll just throw it in the chat. Chris Ringness is on board here. He is grabbing the chat yesterday. We have 90 comments and inputs we're sifting through out of yesterday's presentation and stuff. And you'll see as we get through it how it works. And we're also going to do some polling today, again, because this is new for us. We've got objectives of what we feel to do in all of these classes, but we want to make sure we're hitting the mark. And so before we hit the first class, we're going to be doing polls today to get inputs from you guys to make sure we haven't missed anything and how we're building these classes, because we still have time to get it in there and make sure we're giving you guys the bang for your buck here. So I'm going to share my screen and we will get going. Let me move around the bars, as you guys know who operate in the Zoom world, to be able to get to where I can just display the display. Oh, now I got too much stuff up right now. All right. So basically the agenda, we're going to kind of blow through it. Why are we doing this? Bill gave you a little bit of a viewpoint into kind of how we got here. I'm going to give you a little viewpoint of the background of why we have this unique perspective. Kind of what is the goal of the series, and I'm going to show you guys kind of how we've developed this and flushed this out as far as floor plans. Like I said, everybody is on a different level. We know where the majority of our nonprofits are here in the county and stuff, and where we want to get everybody to. We'll go over the classes. Here's what we'll do the polls right before we launch into each class. I'll ask you guys where you're struggling, where you need help, where you would like to learn more. And then I'll go into the objectives. And that way we can capture anything that we're missing. I'll go over the course presenters. At least this is the main presenters. We're going to be bringing in guests as well to join us. And then I'm going to go over the suggested attendees for these classes. It doesn't have to be the same person. We're going to be taking attendance to be eligible for that capacity grant based on someone representing the organization. Because honestly, the treasurer is probably the best person to attend the nonprofit accounting class and stuff, and to bring that information back. I mean, yeah, the president could attend too, or a committee chair, but you know, we give you some suggested attendees, so you have flexibility there. And we'll go into the logistics. I'll talk about that capacity grant at the end, that if you do have someone attend to all the sessions that you'll be eligible for, and then kind of next steps, and we'll open up for Q&A at the end. So why we're doing this, Bill said framework wise, we've been working our way here. We've gotten to the point that we now have some funds that we can do these capacity grants for, but also just our general mission is about supporting you, the community and the organizations who passionately do your work to benefit our community, to benefit everyone here in El Dorado County. So really that word support is a key thing. We do that a couple of different ways. Here at the foundation, as everyone knows, we operate as a fiscal agent for over 300 funds. Some of them are nonprofits, actually with their 501c3. Some of them are just groups that are wanting to do some good. And so they use us as their fiscal agent and don't have their own standalone 501c3, and they operate underneath our 501c3. So we're constantly having these little groups of entities flowing in and out of the foundation through our fund operation and our fiscal agent role. The other thing is in El Dorado County, we've got a lot of nonprofits. We actually have over 300 in our database alone, that whenever we send you guys a blast, we have over 300 different entities on there. El Dorado County is actually per capita is one of the heaviest nonprofit loads in the state of California. So what does that mean? I'll admit, even whenever I was an ED for Ag in the Classroom, I came to the foundation all the time for questions, because I was like, they know, because they work with so many other nonprofits. I bet they've come up against this problem, or I bet they've had this question. So the foundation has always kind of served as this unofficial consultant in the community for questions or problems, or honestly looking for funds and stuff. So through playing this role, this wealth of knowledge has been developed, and we've actually been able to put nonprofits together. Hey, I know so-and-so struggling with this too. Why don't you two talk? Or they handled this a couple of years ago. Go, you know, let's connect everyone. So we sit in this really interesting middle of the hub of all these nonprofits here in the county. So it really does give us a unique viewpoint to be able to put on these classes. That word support is a big one. So yes, when I looked up support in the dictionary, it is give assistance, especially financially. And that's the way a lot of people think about the foundation. Through Kathy's work is the grants, as the program coordinator and the grantor who gets to give out the funds now and stuff, for us being a fiscal agent and us collecting donations for various funds here. We do a lot of financial work, but the word support also is defined as enable to function or act. And not only to enable and function or act, but the reason we're doing this is to allow you to enable and function and act in an efficient and effective manner and stuff. And if we do that, at the end of the day, it's going to allow you to better support our community that we're all here for, that we're here to serve, and that population. Another big one, being a nonprofit, it allows you to not only serve the people and serve the clients that you are doing with your mission, but also to be a good steward of the community's financial gifts that they've entrusted you with, entrusted us with. That is a big part of it, is understanding as a nonprofit that fiscal judiciousness that you need to have to be able to protect those funds, and to really make sure you're ready for an audit, that you are that you're managing those funds in a judicious manner. So here's the big floor plan. I'm not going to dive deep into this. You guys are going to get a copy of this when this is over, so you can take a look at it. But basically, we kind of looked at basically different organizations and their level of development. You know, I've had the opportunity this year to work with a group that is just on the ground level, that it is just a group of people who want to do something good. It's one that actually wants to do school gardens, because school gardens get up and get going, but unless you have the people behind it continually, you might have one parent come in and they're passionate, and as soon as that parent's kid graduates out or rolls out of that school, there goes the school garden. So here's one that was just a group that has an interest. They have one project. They don't have a lot of money yet. They have no staff. It's just a bunch of people coming together want to do it. So a lot of our people are on the ground floor. They're working boards. They have all volunteers, no staff. We have some on the mezzanine, the next level up, and this is where you probably are still a working board, and you may have contractors to do a project here or there and stuff. So this is where you're starting to move up a bit. But with that, contractors, and with you launching programs into a pilot, you need to start having some structure. So here's where these basic courses are coming into play. So we can move those groups into that mezzanine, get that structure, and immediately try to get them up to that next main floor if that's where they need to go. And that next main floor is where you start doing strategic planning. This is where you're really developing your revenue streams. We all know that out of the chute, you maybe apply for 1 to 2 grants and you're asking all your friends to kick in a buck or two. This is where you can really start to diversify your revenue streams and start considering staffing whenever you get to the main floors. The penthouse is that end all be all. You're no longer a working board. You're now a governing board. You've got staff, you've got capacity, everything's in place. We do down the road, we'll be offering some master classes in this area, but this first year, we're really working on moving a lot of our organizations, because we do recognize that, you know, moving up, that a lot of ours are on the ground floor and mezzanine. A good conversation we had here at the foundation just this last week is, due to circumstances, you can move up and down in these floors. A good example is my organization, Ag in the Classroom, that I was an ED for. They support the schools, and with COVID, they pretty much had to shut everything down. So they have gone from staff all the way back down, at least in some of these areas, all the way back down to the last about year in COVID. They're back to full-on working board, no staff. They've just, because they had all these basics in place though, and they were a pretty high functioning group, they've immediately in the last 3 months moved from the ground floor. They're back on the mezzanine. They just brought back in their first contractor, and their board's starting to hit on all cylinders again and diversifying their funding, and they kept some stuff going. So again, things could move based on circumstances as well, and allowing you to have the tools in place to be able to, if you do bump down due to circumstances, to be able to rise back up pretty quickly whenever you're ready and those circumstances change. So what we're going to start with in this series is we're going to start with the basic level courses. There's going to be 5: governance, organizational structure, investment development and retention, which is of the fancy word for revenue. We all need it to do what we do. Communication plan, which is actually public relations, and then nonprofit accounting, the one that we all dread, but it is super, super important whenever it comes to running a nonprofit. So those will be the 5 courses this spring, or this winter actually, that we'll be doing. So as we move into the next slide, because I think I'm right, I am. Chris, can you launch our first poll, please? So the first class we're going to be offering is governance. If you could take a moment and mark on here, where are your largest struggles or concerns, or where you need to learn more? If you don't see your biggest struggle on here captured, please go ahead and mark other, and then put whatever that struggle is into the chat. Chris, I wonder if it's working because nobody's marking. Kathy, can you try to mark it? Oh, there we go. We're going. I just had to say go. That was it. Go. And again, if you mark other, please load it in the chat so we can make sure that we cover it or try to capture it in the class that we're offering. So, do you struggle to find the right board member? Do you have no term limits and therefore the same people have been on your board for years? Is your board working? You have no paid staff. That's a toughie. There's lots of those here in the county. Bylaws, let's all admit, whenever you started your nonprofit, you probably just took a boilerplate off the internet and you've never looked at it again. But that's a really important one to help you to function efficiently and effectively, is to take a look at those and update them, because that's basically what sets your term limits and it sets your roles and responsibility. Conflicts of interest. Again, a lot of people get into their work because they are passionate about something and they may have a conflict of interest, and being able to deal with that, especially as a working board, is super important. Nice. Okay, Chris, if you could end the poll, please. We'll take a look at the results. So, struggling to find the right board members is the top one. And this, will I'll admit, yesterday out of our larger group was one as well that we had. And we actually just had a discussion. I'll go ahead and share because this one came out so strong yesterday. And there were lots and lots of comments about board and having people that understand what it is to be on a board and board readiness. I think we're actually going to insert, Bill's got a wild hair, that we're actually going to insert a class around people who want to be on a board and stuff. It won't be for you, but it's going to be offered to the community. So you've thought about being a board member, and we're going to leverage, especially our donors here at the foundation, and reach out to them, because these are people who love and are passionate about things that might be a good fit for some of the people who are in need of those right board members. So this is a lovely one. And I'll tell you, we've already taken, between yesterday and today, we've already taken another big step on this one, seeing it so strongly brought out in the data that we're seeing. Number two, looks like we've got the bylaw one. I am totally one that is guilty of that one. And those people that have served for years and years, you hate to discount people for their love of passion of what they do, but you also have to figure out how you bring in that fresh blood and keep it going. So, and then again, too, if you marked other, please throw what your other is in the chat so we can capture it. So I'm going to close out of that and move on to our next slide. It normally takes a minute to catch. Let me move some of your faces so I can see what I'm doing. So governance. The first class will be January 13th and 14th. And what we're hoping, by the way, in these dates, and I forgot to mention this to the group yesterday, we are hoping to have this safely in person. If that is the case, the 14th date, the second date listed, will be for the East Slope and stuff. And I'm actually going to come over there. We're going to do it over there. Kathy's going to join us as much as possible as well. So the second date listed, it will be for the East Slope if we get to do it in person. This course objective is going to go over governance models. A lot of people aren't aware that there are a lot of different governance models out there. Maybe the one you're using isn't the right one for your mission and stuff. It's just what you've known and you've been trudging along with. There's all kinds of models. There's advisory, cooperative, patron, and then there's the good old management and working board. So we'll go over those models, because maybe you might get a light bulb moment about that, as far as that isn't, I could actually be more effective and efficient if I used a different model. We'll go over the board basics, as painful as they are. Documenting those roles, having agendas, and having minutes are really, really important and stuff. It's also really part of your compliance of being a nonprofit, is having those minutes. And then ensuring the organization is held up legally and morally, and fiduciary as well. This includes, again, those bylaws. We'll get into those. We'll get into D&O, which stands for Directors and Officers Insurance. Basically, you know I don't join a board anymore unless that is in place for a board. Just to protect, because there is a lot that goes on. You're always got to be looking at liability whenever it comes to a nonprofit organization. Conflict of interest, which I mentioned earlier, as well as policies and procedures. Bill is going to be the big presenter on this one, along with our community coordinator, Hillary Mulligan. The people that we're suggesting for this one is obviously your leadership. You know, these are the ones that help set up the governance model and then have to operate by the governance model. So if you are a board, your president, your vice president, if you are more of an executive committee type situation, your chair, your vice chair, obviously your secretary and your treasurer are good ones to send into this one as well. So this will be course number 1. Chris, can you launch the next poll, please? Now we're going to talk about organizational structure. So you got your governance. Where are you struggling whenever it comes to structure? Do you have committees? Really, the first one I love, committees. What are those? The board does all the work. Haha. We all know that happens a lot of times. We pull together committees as we need them. So when it comes fundraiser time, you pull together that fundraising committee. Otherwise, that committee sits dark the rest of the year. Do you have committees, but they don't have clear roles and responsibilities and you're kind of stepping on each other? A good one is fundraising and stuff. You got a fundraising committee that is doing all of the PR for the fundraising. They're doing the flyers, they're doing the Facebook, they're doing the everything. But you also happen to have this marketing committee over here that, you know, how do you align it so things are done efficiently and effectively and your roles are clear? Lots of people doing a lot of things. It's hard to keep track of it. How do you report it? So how do you get these committees to communicate up? Because again, governing needs to be governing up at the top, but the governing needs to know what's going on at the committee level. So how's the reporting done? So if you could mark those, and again, if you mark other, please throw it in the chat so we can capture it for the class. Super, super important. I'll admit half of these were me brainstorming on a lot of coffee late at night and with the staff, so we don't see it all. So we may miss something for sure. All right, Chris, if you could end this poll, please. So on this one, we pull together committees as needed and we lack clear roles and responsibilities. So we'll go into the most, into this class, we'll go into the most common committee structures that are most efficient. And we'll definitely go into, give you guys some baselines for those committees as far as roles and responsibilities. So thank you. Let me let my screen catch and we'll move along. So organizational structure, January 20th and 21st for you guys. Again, if in person, it'll be the 21st. Again, we'll go into committee development and structure. We'll give you what we've seen, at least for especially those ground floor and those first, that mezzanine level, what the best structures we've seen to at least get you to move up in efficiency and effectiveness. We'll give you those roles and responsibilities that we see in those committees, a nice basic like outline, so you guys don't have to start from scratch, including the requirements of reporting up to the governing body. We'll also give you some tips and tricks around succession planning. We put these two kind of 1 and 2, and you could almost flip them, governing and organizational structure, because a good way, once you get committees going, if somebody's not ready to be on a board and not ready for all that responsibility, is put them on a committee first. Have them serve for a year, have them get to know the organization. Especially, we've had a lot of people move into our community during COVID. People love El Dorado County, but with all these new people, they don't know that your organization exists. So maybe you meet somebody out that's good at marketing that came in from the Bay Area. Introduce them to, rather than throwing them on a board and freaking them out, put them on a marketing committee first. Let them sit there for a year, get to be passionate about that. Then move them up to the board whenever they have an opening. I'll be the main one presenting on this one. Kathy, I'm sure will have a lot to chime in on this, because just like me, she's sat on multiple nonprofits and is involved still on multiple nonprofits as well as am I. And I've got different structures for different ones. Again, this one's more your leadership. If you have committees, go ahead and send those chairs of those committees. Or if you have anyone that helps with recruitment or succession planning on this one, please send those people. Chris, next poll, please. I feel like I'm Vanna. Next poll. Uh-oh, is he fighting with it? There you go. The next one, investment development and retention. Big fancy words for revenue, fundraising, because basically whenever somebody is giving you money, they are investing in your organization. And it could also be in-kind donations. So how do you foster that? How do you develop that investment? And then once you have that donor, how do you retain them? Everybody always, especially, this is a great time of year, Thanksgiving, Giving Tuesday. Everybody goes online, they do their Giving Tuesday, and then that's it. You may see a blip come in from that person, but how do you hold on to that person? How do you make them give year after year and get more invested in that? How do you grow them to become a long-term investor? How do you take them from giving you $100 to putting them in, you getting put into their will or their estate plan? How do you make those leaps of moving that person up and investing in your organization? I love the one you only have one or two, the people that only throw a fundraiser once a year, 1 or 2 ways to get revenue. You have the same persons or businesses that give every year. How do you grow your donor base? Here's the big one. I love it. It's trending high today too. Most of my board is very uncomfortable asking for money and stuff. I get it. It's hard. It's hard. You want to do the fun stuff. You want to, you know, spay and neuter the kitties, or you want to do school gardens, or you want to do whatever, but you got to get money to get there. And unless we get you comfortable at asking for money, you're never going to build up the revenue to get there. So awesome. Chris, can you end this poll? Again, if you marked other, please throw your other in the chat so we can make sure that we capture it for the classes if we don't have it yet. So you guys are definitely very much on track. I would say yesterday was a little bit more heavy on uncomfortable boards and asking for money and stuff. The attendance was a little higher, but we basically saw the same thing out of East Slope yesterday. Don't know how to grow their donor database or donors and are very uncomfortable. And if you can't ask, you're not going to be able to get more people. So one kind of leads the other. So that'll be super important that we solve this one around being uncomfortable so you can get new people. So I'm going to close this. We'll move on to the slide. Takes a minute to catch. All right. So again, on this class for you guys, if we're in person, it would be the 28th. I did see a few people marked 1 or 2 on their revenue. So we're really gonna dive into understanding your funding streams that are available, whether it's an individual donor, whether it's a corporation or a business through a sponsorship, or being aware of all the matching that is out there and how do you set yourself up for matching, whether you have someone who works at Intel that donates to you, but you aren't set up in their matching program, to make sure you know how to do that. Guys, we aren't the only foundation in town that you can be requesting money from and partnering with. There are other foundations, so making you aware of that and how you engage with foundations. And then the other one that always scares everyone off is government. There is a lot of work that our nonprofits do in the community that lend itself to the work that the government does. And applying or doing what's called an RFP or an RFQ, request for quote or request for proposal, for a government contract that your nonprofit could be doing, it's scary. I get it. I've done one before, a 6-figure through the Department of Food and Agriculture and stuff. But once you've done it and once you kind of know what to expect, it's not too bad. I actually took one group last year. They were not awarded it, but they went through an RFP for the county to do work. They were not awarded the RFP, but now what they have built, they can now take that RFP and all the work that they put into it, and they'll be able to leverage that against multiple applications, whether it's a foundation or a grant or another government RFP. A lot of people don't have a donor database. A lot of people I can go, hey, can you tell me who donated to you last March? And how much was your average donation from last March? Most nonprofits can't tell me that and stuff. So giving you guys some tips and tricks about donor database, getting it set up, and then being able to leverage that and tracking who are your donors, where are they, what are, what's some information about them. And then the big one, the elephant in the room, getting the board to really understand what their role is in fundraising and getting them comfortable with that. Also in this is including the giving board. I can't tell you how many grants or how many foundations that you engage with will want to know that your board is a 100% giving board. It doesn't mean $5,000. They only want to know the percent of giving. It could be a baby step by saying everybody on our board gives at least $25. That way, whenever it comes to that engagement with that funder, you can say, my board is invested not only with their time, but with money. They don't know it was $25, but they know that they put their money where their mouth was and gave a little bit. The presenters on this one is going to be Lois Roberts, who's our donor services liaison. Again, Lois is the one that works with our donors, works with our funds. So she definitely really knows how to cultivate relationships and is going to have a lot of really great input in here. And then your homegrown Kathy Haven is going to be in on this one, especially around grants. And understanding that we know a lot of people don't know how to write grants. You don't have a grant writer. So it's a volunteer trying to do this. So giving you guys some tips and tricks and really building a boilerplate for being successful in the grant area. Again, on this one, it's a lot of your leadership, but if you have somebody who's in fundraising or you have a development chair or you have someone who, we have a volunteer that tries to write our grants, send them to this one. This one will be a good one for them. Chris, can you launch the next poll, please? Communications and public relations. This is a big one, especially in the era we are in now with social media, and there's so many different ways. So on this one, are you someone that just kinds of winging it? When you have something, you post it and stuff. Do you not have like a brand? You have a logo and you have your letterhead because that's what you have to have generally to request something from a local business, but that's kind of where it ends. Social media, scary, scary. A lot of groups are scared of social media. So have you not bothered to go there yet? Or you don't understand how to go there? I have a personal account, but I don't understand how these other accounts work and stuff. So you don't have a social media presence. Social media is really, really important, especially if you want to grow that slide before, grow your donor database, because the generations, even my daughter's generation who's getting ready to graduate from high school, this is where they live and breathe and stuff. But you also have to be aware of our county's breadth in this area. We have those in our county that still want that postcard for their refrigerator. So you really do need to have a wide breadth of media presence. Lacking skill sets, your website's outdated and stuff. So mark on there. Again, if you mark other, please throw it in the chat so we make sure we can cover you, because there's a lot of others in this one. Oh, I'm going to be excited to see what goes in the chat and stuff, because there are a lot of others on this one. Okay, Chris, if you could end the poll on this one. And because I'm so intrigued, I'm going to pop open my chat window and see if anybody if I can see it and see what somebody throws in there. Somebody's got some strong people already. Doing okay, could do much better. So make sure if you mark that other, please throw it in the chat so we can capture it. That will be great. So we make sure we can hit everything that you need in this class. This one, February 4th on the East Slope. Again, we'll be focusing on your brand identity and your overall messaging. The engagement mix will be a big conversation. Again, knowing your audience and then utilizing the tools that most impacts that particular audience. As scary as it is, basically, my age demographic is very much Facebook, a little bit into Instagram. The next group down is Instagram. The next group down gets into your Snapchats and stuff. All ages seem to like Twitter. So really understanding the engagement mix that's available for you. We still have really good print here. You guys have really great print up in South Lake as far as print audience goes, and the Tahoe Tribune. So just really understanding that mix that's available to you. The big one on communication is not doing that ad hoc and getting in front and having a plan and a calendar. It also lightens the load for whoever is doing the work in this space by having a plan and knowing. One of the first things, everybody's hot to trot on Facebook, and then they get overwhelmed. And you can actually, there's a whole scheduling tool on Facebook that a lot of people know about, a lot of people don't know about. You could sit down and schedule your entire month of Facebook posts if you were ready for it in advance in like an hour shot or a 45-minute shot and be done and walk away. And they'll just post all month long whenever you scheduled them to be. So great tips like that. Same with some of the mail platforms, MailChimp and Constant Contact are great ones that you leverage their ability to schedule and therefore you lighten the load. Chris Ringness, who is our PR and communications coordinator here at the foundation, is going to be the lead presenter on this one. Again, this one's very important to any marketing or communication chairs. If you're a website person, a social media manager, or volunteer, there are particular things on your website that should be there just by being a nonprofit that you should have there if a funder goes and looks. I just last week met with a fairly big nonprofit in our community, and I was asking them governance questions, and they had just done a website refresh not too long ago using an outside source, and their board was no longer on their website and stuff. Very big community. So we're also going to share with you some of the basics that should be on your website as a nonprofit. Part of it is compliance, and it has to be available to people. So making sure that you're aware of that. Chris, can you launch the next poll, please? Oh, the dreaded one. We saved it for last. Nonprofit accounting. And we call it nonprofit accounting because doing fiscal management of a nonprofit is in many ways very different from doing it from a business. So in this one, is your accounting system paper-based, or are you using a very simple Excel spreadsheet? Meaning you aren't using QuickBooks, or you aren't using something like that, where you actually are using general ledger or what's called GL codes, and understanding why that is important and why that is something you might want to consider. Do you have a clear view of all your revenue streams, including your restricted funds? I can tell you, again, we just did some site visits with nonprofits last week, and basically when they get a grant, they throw it in the checkbook and they spend it. And there isn't clear, this is what this was for. It's restricted. I can only spend it for that. And so we're asking for them to clean up their books and do some delineation. It's really important. If somebody sends you, Caldor Fire was a good example for us here at the foundation. If we got a check that was only supposed to be used if somebody wrote in the memo animals for the Caldor Fire, we had to take that check as a foundation and not throw it into the general Caldor fund. We had to find somebody supporting animals in the Caldor Fire to give that to, because those funds were restricted. I love number 3, you trust your treasurer, your bookkeeper is doing it right, but you really don't understand what they're saying in a meeting. I was so classic for that early on. They were throwing around jargon, and I just said, you're the expert, I'm sure, and stuff. I'm sure it's fine. That is very, very dangerous. As we've seen for some nonprofits here in our county, we've actually had some who have gotten in trouble, or I hate to say it, their treasurer or the bookkeeper wasn't on the up and up. And so, and these were simple ones. These were, these were booster organizations and stuff. So being aware and getting a little bit more knowledgeable of what your treasurer and your bookkeeper is presenting. So, so you understand what is going on in that space. I'm seeing a lot of others. Please put it into the chat so we can make sure that we capture it. IRS requirements. It's a big one. There's a lot of little filings you have to do to stay compliant. not just your 990 or your 990N if you're smaller. There's other things that could flag. I just caught one yesterday that of a nonprofit, again, a small one here in the county. It's a working group and stuff that hadn't updated their charity registration. Nowadays, your charity registration has to be updated and made active every other year, but yet they were 4 or 5 years out of compliance. So that means if they go to submit, even to just submit for a raffle, they might get flagged. They might go and check to make sure they're in compliance, and they're not, and stuff. So they might not only not get their raffle approved, but they may also get red flagged by the IRS or someone else. So that's super important. Please put those others in there. Thank you, Chris. Oh, I'm sorry, Chris, you can end the poll. I just got talking. So yep, on this one, those revenue streams, super, super important. And I can tell you as someone who gives out funding, it's something that we're really watching on to make sure that those that we grant funds to are restricting those funds and know how to manage that. So we'll give you guys tips and tricks on that. Lacking that regular review of finances. I know a lot of people don't have formal audits, but you should at least have an informal audit put into your organization on it every single year. Just have the bookkeeper or the treasurer sit down with a couple of board members and run through the numbers and look at everything and sign it off. That informal audit is very important. And a lot of times whenever you start going for bigger grants, they will want to see, do you do an audit? And even that informal audit counts. I happen to be the president of the Ponderosa High School Foundation. We're pretty small. We're only a 990N file, but we do an informal audit internal every single year for the foundation. So we will end this one and let my screen catch. So nonprofit accounting will be approximately February 11th. Again, we'll really be going into what is the difference between nonprofit and a business and including those budget basics. How to read a nonprofit financial statement. A lot of organizations, even some on this call, get financial statements from us in the foundation. Do you just file it away and assume that everything is good? Or do you actually know how to read it to say, even to us, you know, hey, what's going on here? Why are my fees this when they were this? And to ask those questions that you really understand what that financial statement has. Financial planning and controls and fiduciary oversight best practices. So again, these are those things, those audits. This is even to the point of understanding if somebody brings you that check and it has, you know, restricted something in the memo. How do you deal with that check versus a check that just comes with nothing in the memo? It's very different. It's also very important to understand from an audit perspective and a receipt perspective. Receipts for someone who donates goods for you is very different from a receipt or an acknowledgement of someone that gives you cash. They're managed very differently. Once you have the language for them, they're very easy, but a lot of people don't understand that it is two different sets of language for those two different kinds of receipts. And again, understanding your compliance regarding filings and therefore keeping you out of the audit territory, especially an IRS audit. So on this one, Sakita Madraswala, who's our CPA here at the foundation, will be doing this one, as well as Lois Roberts, because she's the one that whenever people do have questions about their fund statements or their financial statements coming from the foundation, a lot of people call her and ask about them. So understanding how to read those. Again, the suggested attendees for this one is your finance chair, treasurer, bookkeepers, accountant, and if it's just a volunteer, send them in. I know a lot of bookkeepers and accountants, CPAs. Sakina has gone through specific training and very detailed training as far as nonprofits go, because you may have a bookkeeper that offered this to them. See if they want to attend on behalf of your organization. It actually will make them more marketable here in our community. We are constantly looking for good bookkeepers here in the community that understand nonprofits. So if we can get a few more comfortable in a nonprofit space, that's good for all of us, because this is a struggle. I have a treasurer, for instance, right now, that she's a treasurer on 5 different nonprofits with me because she gets it and she knows it. She's in really high demand and stuff, and we can do that for some others in our community. So the fun one. So those are the 5 classes. and I'm doing pretty good. So we'll have some Q&A time. If you send someone from your organization to all 5 classes, because again, we're giving you the tools to be able to use this and put it into place, we are going to have capacity grants available up to $50,000 this next year. These are not project grants. These are not programmatic grants. These are capacity grants, the thing we've all been aiming for. When you do the budget narrative for these, you'll want to make sure that these are aligning to exactly that. What the capacity is you're going to be growing, what are you going to be improving, or what are you going to be expanding? Some good examples, and Bill hit on them in the intro of this, would be, are you ready to move off of Excel and onto QuickBooks? But you need not only the software, you need the training. Do you need some website development and some enhancements? Do you need a grant writer for a little bit to get that boilerplate language together and stuff for you to do good grants? Do you need to hire a bookkeeper or a CPA to help with that lift? I know one group that could really just use almost an executive admin right now to schedule things, to take some of that load off of the board, to enable them to go out and ask for money, because they always feel that they're running, and to keep those minutes and stuff, to allow them to really go out and share their passion and their mission. Is that something that you need? We had the question yesterday and I wasn't quite ready, but Kathy's here today, that there is plenty of time on this. They were like, oh my goodness, how, when do we have to have this ready? So we'll finish these classes in February, if all goes well, and you will have until the RFP, or request for proposal, or application, will open approximately April 15th. And you'll have about 4 weeks to get your application in. So you have plenty of time to go through these classes and learn and say, and work with your board or work with your committee and say, this is what I think we need. This is where I think we would get the most bang for our buck. And then just for your planning purposes, the funds would be distributed in June or July. If all goes well with this, because we know in year 1 of this capacity grant, you will probably just be learning, if it's onboarding someone, getting them onboarded, getting them going and stuff. So we really know it takes 2 years to get to really get traction on something new for an organization. So that's why you see this grant will actually be renewable if you show us that your year 1 funding is on track per your budget narrative for what you were going to spend it on, and we'll do a site visit to make sure that you're utilizing those best practices that we taught you. So even if you use your grant to hire a website developer, we better make sure that in your finances, we see that you've restricted that money and that it's being used to pay for that website developer's paycheck. So we want to see that you are not only using the funds that you use the way you said you would use them, but you would be reflecting it in everything that we taught you along the way. So if not, then you may be at risk for not getting a renewable for year 2. So it is renewable, so super exciting. And really, we kind of sat down as a staff and we said, especially if you want to hire a person, $50,000 is what's needed. So the foundation and Endow El Dorado is really putting the money, we're really putting it out there. We're making this available. So we're really hoping you guys embrace this and really take it and run with it. So next steps for you as an organization: discuss this internally to decide and register. The registration will probably open after Thanksgiving break. You'll have some time to register. Who's the best to attend the session? If you have a good enough group, who's going to gain the most benefit? Look at those suggested attendees and have that conversation. If the best person isn't available who would get the most out of it, if the treasurer is not available to go to the cost accounting, then pick someone out who is really good at bringing back those key learnings and could share and is willing. And if all else fails, who's available? Because even if you have someone available getting some tidbits out of this, it's going to be valuable, even just picking up little things. Again, we will be taking attendance at each session by organization representation, not by individual representation. So if you have to tag out at the last minute, that's why I have a vice president at the Ponderosa High School Foundation if something comes up and my vice president needs to run the meeting. That's why they're there. So if you need to check out, that can happen as well. That's totally okay. We just want to make sure we get your organization there and we get them the information. What we're going to be doing over the next couple of weeks is we're continuing to monitor public health and safety protocols, and we're going to be looking at registration and how the numbers are coming in and the venues that we have for doing these classes as far as what's going on with health and safety. We really, really would like to do this in person because we have some awesome case studies we want to do. We have some collaboration activities we want to do that are really suited for that environment. And that's what we hope for. And that's what we're gunning for right. So for right now in your planning, plan for it to be in person. And if we have to back off, unfortunately, we have to back off. But our first goal is to do this in person and to be able to collaborate. But we will want to do that in a safe manner. For timing wise, these will be happening, and our timing on these as far as time of day is going to be the late morning. So again, especially if you're a working board, it's going to be important for you guys to share it. I know I had a board yesterday come to me, well, everybody works. And so we get that. So we're hoping, we just suggested, you know, maybe somebody takes this one and somebody takes that one and they take a long lunch that day and stuff to hopefully make it work. So those are kind of the next steps for you as an organization to go back. So I will stop share. Any questions, please raise your hand. Any follow-ups, any clarifications? It was a lot and I did it 11:56.
Just one of the observations that came out of yesterday's conversation when we did the same presentation on the Western Slope is it is difficult, and it seems to be becoming more difficult for organizations to recruit really good board members. Some of you have really good board members, but we're also looking at how do we utilize our donors and train them to become good board members. So it's something we're going to be looking at as a foundation, as a whole course on how to become a board member for a nonprofit in our community. So we start building a base of new board members that can incorporate themselves into the existing boards and a replacement, because you can't always depend sometimes on the same group of people. So we need to start building the next generation of board members.
I did that good of a job. Really, I'm not buying it, guys.
Do you think this is a good way for us to go? You're all being very quiet.
I know. Do you like this? We can go back to project and programmatic grants if you want.
Well, Karen,
I mean, if I'm a nonprofit, I'm like,
thought.
show me the money. No, I'm kidding.
So Jude, what do you think? Is this going down the right road?
I think it's fantastic. I think, you know, something that kind of came to me, and I think seeing Stephanie's comments from the Humane Society as well, is, you know, those of us who are part of bigger entities who they themselves put a lot of checks and balances on us. You know, perhaps we've already had to go through some of these processes. You know, to give you an example right now, I'm back and forth with my broker because Boys and Girls Club of America has put like huge insurance requirements upon us this year to be part of that group. And, you know, they already require an annual audit and lots of steps and processes just to wear the hands. So I think, you know, you may find there's a difference between very small entities and very large entities. And I know it's hard because you're going to have to walk the middle.
Yeah.
Jude,
Jude, great. Go ahead, Kathy.
Jude, you're an organization that is really on the cusp of
greatness
development curve, where you're going to, in not too distant future, you're going to need to make that leap to hired staff. So how does this play out for you?
Yeah, this is perfect. Oh, sorry, Jude or Drew?
Drew.
Yeah, sorry, Jude. I know she's awesome. It's great. This is perfect timing, and this is exactly what I am looking for. I'm comfortable with a lot of the business skills, business leadership, finance, operations, etc. Learning the nonprofit side, how to make that work, and not getting tripped up on the small things, whether it be a filing. I'm already looking at some of the financial systems here, they're good. What can we do to make it better? And this sort of stuff, especially with the shared wisdom of the group, and then with Bill and Avis and your team and Kathy, there's some pretty amazing people there. So this smaller approach with the trainings available and not overwhelming, I think is amazing. It's exactly what I'm looking for. And I'm going to guess that I probably speak on behalf of a couple of others of I'm comfortable, but this is going to make it successful and prevent issues or, you know, problems down the road.
And it's
Kathy,
going
did
to
you
narrow
have something
down.
to say about the corporate one? Go ahead.
Yeah, well, I was just going to mention for those of you in the big organizations, the corporate ones, we are going to, especially when it gets to the granting, we're going to talk a lot about some of the weaknesses we see, which we've seen with very, what's the word, experienced corporate groups. But, you know, you're still, like for us, you're applying for a relatively small grant. And like, I know, Jude, your Boys and Girls Club is very separate than Boys and Girls Club of America, but many organizations have a little trouble separating out their funds to their specific locations. And we're really going to focus on that because that's really important for your grant recording on how things go. And then I wanted to say, and the other great thing, like Drew, you hit on, this is going to be a nice refresher for some people and whatnot, but it's also narrowing your competition down for who can apply for this, right?
I love it. Yeah, Kathy hit the one on the head, just perfect. Again, we just started implementing site visits this year here at the foundation with my role, and Kathy and I just wrapped up. Basically, if it was 10K or above, we did site visits, and we saw some stuff with larger organizations that they're getting what I call even better ifs. They're going to get even better if suggestions from us here at the foundation, as far as, you know, what we need to see to continue to fund them, because they are so big that El Dorado County specific impact is lost in their numbers and lost in their finances. So that's super important. Great feedback.
This is also a very critical spring. There's a lot of construction going on in the house. This is a critical springboard for us as a foundation to have this conversation with our donors. Donors are very used to giving to programs. They love giving to the warm puppy, giving to staffing, giving to administrative costs, giving to salary costs is not really in their DNA. We need to change that DNA because we don't get good program outcomes unless we support excellence in the organization. And so this, by having this class structure, allows us now to engage our donors, which is many thousands, to help them understand the importance of supporting organizational capacity and what that means.
Awesome.
Bill, can I just echo that sentiment? I think that's amazing, and I know something a lot of us have wanted for a while. Skilled staff that are actually paid what they're worth, I think is going to be crucial going forward, and particularly in Tahoe. If they can't recruit doctors here, how on earth are they going to recruit nonprofit employees? And I am sure that every single face on this screen is not paid what they're worth. And so, you know, if there's any messaging we can help with to that effect, I will jump on that bandwagon.
And it's changing the narrative that for some reason that people believe that if you work for a nonprofit, you deserve to be paid less. No, we are the most important business sector in any community, and you should be supporting it at the level of excellence. And that means pay, that means all the compensation, that means the stability of the organization to operate in the capacity it needs to do to accomplish the important community work that we do. We shouldn't be at the bottom of the pay scale. We should be at the top.
Yay, Jude. Awesome. Well, I didn't quite hit my 12:02, but I did get it done before 12:05 at least. So you will be getting this presentation as long as a thank you and a reminder about registration, as well as our email addresses. If you have any further questions, you can reach out and let us know. And please go back to your groups, and we'll look forward to seeing you in January. And happy holidays, since we won't see you before then. Thanks for coming.